and welcome to everyone here. We're very grateful that you've come to participate or give your story or hear the stories and perhaps share some of yours about this really important time of year for sort of filling your cup, if you will. Really an important time for that. So I welcome you all, and we will, just to give you an overview, have two sections. The first section will be caregivers who are recently or ongoingly taking care of somebody and talking about their experience with the holidays. And then we'll have a share from Reverend Barbara, who's also a supporter of a group of caregivers, as is Karen Kelleher here. And we'll tell you more about our programs a bit at the end, but let's begin. Thank you, Karen.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Karen Kelleher. I'm Family Caregiver Support Coordinator for Daybreak. We've had our support group now for 4 years, over 4 years, going into 5. 3 of our caregivers from our support group have graciously agreed to share their experiences of the holidays with you today. So here we are again in the holidays. Halloween is behind us. Okay, maybe Halloween isn't considered part of the holidays, but it certainly does usher in the fact that Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Hanukkah and New Year's are right around the corner. I think especially with Thanksgiving coming up, there's this image of a Norman Rockwell kind of getting together of family, and everybody is kumbaya around a turkey, for those that are carnivores, and lots of vegetarian food for those who are not. But the fact remains that it can represent a time of closeness and belonging, but it can also represent a time of isolation, grief, and loneliness. There's a lot of expectations on what the holidays are supposed to look like. It's charged with occasions filled with memories and expectations, met and unmet. So a lot of us measure ourselves against what we think the perfect holiday should look like. For caregivers, it's particularly poignant and emotional, has the components of emotional charge, because they're dealing with a change in condition of their loved one. And what that can mean is that the holidays need to be altered. Maybe family isn't as close anymore. Maybe our loved one is presenting issues that we don't want to share with our family anymore. There can be a lot of different situations that can come up as we care for our loved one in mental and physical decline. There are adjustments to be made, and searching for what is our new normal. What is the new normal way that we celebrate the holidays? Let's take Norman Rockwell out of the picture. Let's take a look at what we have before us, what we have to be grateful for, perhaps, but also to create a new holiday based on what is. And so, as I said, we have 3 caregivers that are with us today, and I'm going to ask them a series of 5 questions, and they can give you a sense of how the holidays are for them. I think what we'll do is I will start with our first caregiver, Gail. So Gail, if you could introduce yourself and also give us a sense of your caregiving situation as it is now, and a little background into how it's been. And then I will ask you a few questions to address that.
All right. Hello, everyone. I first joined Daybreak, I believe it was 2019. Susan and Karen could correct me on that. It was at the senior center. And with the pandemic, we had to move over to Zoom. So I continued on that way. I don't know what I would have done without this group. My husband was diagnosed 8 years ago with a neurodegenerative disease, which was finally determined to be multiple system atrophy with Lewy body dementia. And I took care of him for 5 years with some help from a home health aide, a wonderful home health aide. But this group is what made every week possible to be able to look forward and accept each new change. And there were so many changes. He went into hospice here at home in January, and he passed away in July, on July 13. So these are my first holidays without him.
Well, thank you, Gail. So on that note, how did you observe Thanksgiving and Christmas in the past before your loved one became ill?
Going way back, it was the Norman Rockwell dining room table with my aunts and uncles and all my cousins. I'm the youngest of 10 cousins. But as the cousins got older and the aunts and uncles passed away and we kind of scattered around the globe, we kind of focused on our own little families. So for my husband and I, it was family, a small family, and then friends. We always had a mix. It seemed like there were always friends at our Thanksgiving. So it's been very flexible, sometimes at other people's homes, sometimes here. In more recent years, I've hosted here. And when he became ill, there wasn't too much difference because he was never the cook, my brother was. And then my granddaughter's boyfriend also took up that role. So the three of us would cook, but I would just pull the wheelchair up to the table and everything seemed to go on the same as it was. I was just thinking that at Halloween, I really missed him because he loved to pass out the candy to the kids. That was his,
Ah,
oh, he
so
put on a mask and
gets to be part of the
crazy
holiday.
hands, and he just loved sitting on the big porch and passing out the candy, and that was great. I could take him pieces of pizza and run back and forth. So this year I brought my brother. He came down, and my brother came down, and he helped me. So I really kind of missed Bob's enjoyment of that and all the little kids that he used to talk to and everything. Uh, so that's been a little bit different. And I have yet to go into, obviously, Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Sure. Well, that pretty much answers question number 2, which would be, how has that changed? You fleshed that out beautifully. So I move on to the next question, which is, how have you adjusted?
I haven't. It seems like since my husband passed, everything has just been cascading. I'm finally paying attention to my own health, which is involved. I was telling you the other day, and now I've had 12 dentist appointments since July for some crowns, and I've had some arthritis in my knee with a cortisone, and it just seems, and I've had work done on the house that I delayed. And so it's just been one thing after the other, and then boom, the holidays are here. And I'm supposed to be ready for that, and I'm not.
Yes.
So I decided that is going to have to change, and
Wow.
making different plans for Thanksgiving and Christmas.
I'm hearing flexibility. I'm hearing a certain amount of acceptance of what is, based on how you're facing your first year without your husband. I want to move on to the next question because I'm really interested in your feedback with this one, Gail. What have you learned as a result?
I learned it in my caregiver group about how the caregiver group was focused on the caregiver, and I needed to learn to do the same thing. When my husband's neurologist said to me last year, "And how are you doing?" I said, "Thank you for asking, because that's not something you hear very often from many of my husband's medical providers."
Mm.
And we had been with him for 8 years, and he's wonderful. But I realized that, my goodness, the caregiver can't, the disease can't take the caregiver too. And the disease is almost like a third person in the room. And I'm glad that third person is gone. I miss my husband, but boy, I do not miss the disease. And the disease was making the decisions, was affecting his moods, was affecting his dementia, was affecting his choices. And so now, without the disease and just missing my husband and realizing, it can't be the same, but it can be a new normal, and I can still be enjoyable, I've decided to move forward and just embrace, give myself a break,
Yes,
take care of myself,
yes,
let myself have some grace this fall, not have any real big expectations. I told my family I really don't want to host for Thanksgiving this year. Everybody was great about it. They said, take care of yourself, do what you need to do. So I'm going to Monterey to visit a girlfriend for Thanksgiving. And then for Christmas, it's going to be pretty downplayed a little bit. The neighborhood decorates a lot, and I'll put up some exterior decorations and things like that. But I'm going to focus more on the time with my family and less on the interior decoration and less on everything being just the way it always was. And then next year I'll define it again based on what I need. But I'm not going to try and recreate everything we've done in the past, especially this year.
yeah. We hear a lot about the phrase new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with each one of you that are sharing today and those who are viewing this know that in dealing with the role of caregiver, there does need to be a new normal, and it doesn't have to be negative. But I think some of the things that I'm hearing from you, Gail, are an adjusting and acceptance, a flexibility, um,
And
all centered around, because that's what our groups are about, your caregiving. I
I'm,
mean, your personal.
there's a word I learned in our group that just I think is one of the most important words is redirecting and reframing.
That's
So I'm
exactly,
redirecting myself and I'm reframing my expectations.
that's perfect.
Looking at it that way and saying, you know what, redirecting and reframing worked so good for caregiving. So why not work it now to help with redefining my new life? I'm just getting my feet under me since he passed. And the holidays are coming up awfully quick. I might have a different story for you if this has happened in January.
That's right.
But it only happened a few months ago. And so this is what I'm willing to do this year. And next year may be different. Next year
Maybe different.
right back the way it was, or it might be something new, but I'm just going to I'm just going to stay flexible
Yes.
and,
And
and see what
flexibility
the
is really
opportunity.
a good key word for you. I think you answer the final question of what would you share to caregivers. I think you've uh, personified it
I
with
think the most important thing is don't let the calendar or the media or the all the advertising tell you direct you to what kind of celebration you should have. Look into your heart and decide what works for you and take care of yourself. Just take care of yourself this holiday season. And it may be a little bit less than what you would normally do, and that's fine too. And next year might be a little bit different. But focus on yourself because that's what caregivers really need to do most of all, is to take care of themselves.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Gail.
You're welcome.
That was really fabulous. Thank you for sharing. We're going to move on to Shantae. Shantae, if you might tell us who you're caring for, and a little bit about your caregiving experience.
I'm caring for my husband. He was officially diagnosed with dementia in April of 2019. And as I became more aware of the disease and how it manifests, I know that it started some years before that. He's early onset, subsequent to just the dementia diagnosis. It was determined that it was Alzheimer's, and he also developed what you call primary progressive aphasia. So he cannot really communicate. It's basically gibberish. Every so often you will get some clarity, but there's no communication for the most part.
Thank you. You've been caring for him solely by yourself. You've had a little help from time to time through IHSS, but you've carried this for a number of years now. So I'd in light of that, I'd like to know, how did you observe Thanksgiving and the holidays in the past?
Prior to any of this taking place,
Yes.
it's with family or extended family and having choices. We might go between a few houses. We might stay at my daughter's for a while or be at his mom's house for a while, or even stay home. You know, we stay in a small apartment, so we weren't usually the host of anything, but we were free to go as we chose. Both being able to engage in the activities that would take place. We're a family that likes to play family games, dominoes, and spades, and sometimes board games, depending on where we were. We used to love to play Taboo and just different games like that. And like I said, we could both engage in those things.
Okay, so yeah, I moved with the question, how has that changed? What has changed? Um,
Well, I was thinking last year, my husband was in skilled nursing facility for a few months, and both Thanksgiving and Christmas, he was there. And so I was trying very hard. Sorry for grandkids in the background. I was trying very hard to, see him every day. So Thanksgiving, taking him a plate, and trying to be there with him, but it was a distance because I was trying to spend it also with my family, my grandkids, and my daughter here in Antioch. And Christmas, it was like later in the day that I was able to stop by. That was just last year, and so I was thinking as far as choices before he went into the skilled nursing facility, things had already declined to a point where it was getting difficult. Sometimes his behavior was unpredictable. So I guess self-imposed restrictions as to where I would go and what I would do and where I felt comfortable taking him came up. And now I'm going where I feel comfortable, where I can get help, if I need it, maneuvering a wheelchair, transferring him here or there or whatever. So I don't have to do those things on my own, where I just feel comfortable around the people. You just don't know how everybody's going to react, respond. And you need a certain amount of space, when you're maneuvering with wheelchairs and things like that. So you can't just be anywhere and everywhere. And yeah, and he can't engage in the activities like he used to. So that plays a part too. So that's quite different. You try to make him as comfortable as possible. If their guys are watching football or something, he might be in the room, but he can't engage, so it's different.
yeah, it is different. It is, here again, that word new normal. Yeah, new normal is like a movable feast, because that normal sometimes has to change into a different kind of normal.
Mhm.
But I'm curious, Shantae, what have you learned as a result of caregiving for your husband? What have you learned? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned?
Oh, just things that I never would have considered that I would have to do, that I'm doing for sure. I my husband cannot do anything for himself. Let's just put it that way. So I'm doing everything, without, any graphics or anything. So, and I never would have thought things I wouldn't have done. This is kind of funny to me because you know, I, I tell him I'm not rubbing those old crusty feet. And now I'm taking care of him, and trying to make sure everything is okay and as it should be, because he can't do it himself, and
Mhm.
just things like that. So I'm capable of adapting, to my situation and circumstances for sure. Taking a day at a time, and things have changed. That we went through a period where there was like kind of violence there, and I had to adjust to that. Um, the the hours of the night, being up unpredictable. I had to adjust to that. Yes, just a lot of things. So
Right, that's certainly true. Um, and I've certainly seen it with your shares in our groups. So I'm curious, what might you share with caregivers and families to make caregiving, or particularly focusing around the holidays? What might be some things that you could share that might make it easier for caregivers um, navigating the holidays?
just take a deep breath and decide what's best for you and your loved one, and hopefully still be able to find joy that perhaps you once had in it, and not there could be a tendency for things to become mundane because you have so much more responsibility
Yeah.
than you did before, where you could just enjoy, so try to find that joy and do what you can to make that happen.
Well, thank you. And you certainly personified it, Shante. Thank you for sharing that. Kim, we're going to move to you. Hi, Kim. Tell us about who you're caring for and a little bit of background on your situation.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I care for my mother. She's 86 with severe dementia. She came to me last February from a bad kind of a home situation. And when she came to me, I actually had two jobs. I worked full time as a teacher, and then I worked part time teaching adult ed at night. And she just kind of appeared and stayed, and APS was involved. So I quit my night job, and then I took a leave from my day job and ended up retiring early from my day job. And so for the last 20 months, I've been her full-time caregiver. I've had the luxury of having paid caregivers in the home for some of that time. That was super helpful, but that came with a lot of problems. And about a month and a half ago, she was hallucinating so bad, nighttime, daytime, just hallucinating, that she admitted that she wanted to actually have a little bit more medical help around her. So I went ahead and we went to Carefield, Castro Valley, and she became a resident of Carefield, and so she's been there ever since.
Yes. Okay. And you visit her frequently?
I visit her at least once a day, sometimes twice. I'm really just kind of check her over, see how it's going, see if she's got any abrasions or bruises. Just kind of check on the clothes. I One thing that I didn't realize what was how much caregiving I would give when she was in a facility.
Yeah.
Because I got to make sure she's got all her medications. I got to keep checking in with the med staff about how she's doing. I That part I did not anticipate, but yes, it's just part of what we do.
It is, and it keeps you in the category of caregiver uh, in a different setting.
Mhm, mhm.
So my first question would be, how did you observe the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, in the past before your mother became ill?
Well, in the past, we usually had like pretty big holiday times. I have three brothers and my mom and my dad, and we've been pretty family orientated to where my family kind of stuck together, and the wives and the kids. We would go up to Tahoe and we would spend a lot of time in Tahoe together. And so we really were kind of a unit.
Mm.
And that's how we did it in the past. Well, since my mom has become ill, part of my mom become ill has been a big division within my family. And so, because I'm power of attorney medical, I have the say about what happens to my mom, and the other part of my family is not agreeing with my decisions. So we've actually going into a big court case. So what's happened is my family has divided. I have no contact with half of my family, and it's pretty horrible. So my holidays this year are going to be super different. I'm just going to be with my friends, maybe check in with my mom, because we're going to be doing this dodge and weaving in the facility so we don't have to talk to each other. So it's going to be really very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. And here again, I'm hearing a theme of being flexible and being adaptable. And that certainly applies in your situation presently. So I think that kind of answers my next question about how you've adjusted. Um, Want to say more on that?
Yeah, one thing that okay, so when my mom became ill, I really counted on people. And I thought I had people that I could count on and turn to, and many of them let me down. Many of them. Church group let me down, other kinds of friends let me down, family let me down. And what I've had to do is actually create this like grassroots support system for myself,
Yes.
because I did not expect that, because you kind of think, oh, they'll be there for you. Well, they weren't. And
Mhm.
so what's happened is my friends have became my anchor, is basically my friends. They're the ones that are super here for me. And so that's what's different, because I thought, oh, my family will always be there. Well, no, they
Mhm.
won't.
Mhm.
So that's been different. Yeah.
Well, you've created a chosen family.
Mhm.
You've created a chosen family, and I think a lot of people can identify with that. Connections by birth are wonderful and solid when they are, but I
Mhm.
think as we get older, we also create um, our own family,
Yeah.
and it sounds like you're doing that and have done that.
Yeah.
Um, so, what have you learned as a result of your experience with caregiving? What have you learned?
I think, of course, I've learned how to be a caregiver, how to change diapers and, take vitals and, the stuff we do, bandage wounds and wheelchairs. I knew I did commodes and nothing. Anyway, so I've learned all of that. Um, but basically, I've learned that just because my mom is sick, she's still my mom, and that I really need to be very compassionate. And when she was living with me, that's like 2 a.m. compassion. When I'm exhausted, I'm not sleeping, and she's not sleeping. She wants to wander around the house. I'm trying to keep her safe, and it is a mess. That's when I had to really dig deep to be very compassionate with her. And sometimes did I lose it? Yeah, I'd lose it. And so it really taught me that you're in a position that you have to just reach even deeper inside yourself so that you don't have to create any wreckage. Um, and I also learned that I had to learn how to do what I didn't want to do. There's many times that I didn't want to
Right.
change the
Thank
diaper.
you.
I didn't want to do that. I mean, I had friends that were like, no, this is the time that you stand up. I know you don't want to do this, but you know what? You do this. And I'm grateful for that, because there were many times that I didn't think I could do it anymore. Um, and so I'm kind of glad, because it actually taught me a lot more resiliency as a person, that I could get through some of these really hard times. I've done a lot of things in my life. A caregiver is the hardest I've ever done. The
Thank you.
hardest.
That's
Yeah,
what we say in group.
yeah,
Caregiving is the hardest
the
job you
hardest.
ever have, or
Yeah,
that you never signed up for. We have
yeah,
a couple of versions of that, but
yeah.
they relay the same thing, which is you're drafted into a position that you have no prior training in, and you have an emotional component that muddies the field. So you can't walk away 8 hours later from your caregiving job. And I think that's important. One of the things that you had shared in group, Kim,
Mhm.
You emphasized change. You want to speak to that for just a moment?
Okay, one thing so I didn't realize that by stepping into a caregiver role, my life was going to change. For some reason, I kept trying to have my old life in this crazy situation, and I got so frustrated because I didn't realize that no, things were going to change now, that my old life was gone, and I had to kind of grieve my old life.
Yeah.
But everything in my life changed. I no longer had my jobs. I had caregivers in and out of here all the time. My mom, friends, everything had to change, and I had to be okay with like the unknown. See,
Yes.
I wanted to
Thank you.
control, I want to run things, but I had to learn how to be okay with not knowing and the unknown, because
Thank
there's
you.
a lot of unknowns when you're a caregiver. And so, I had to really change that way. And just to, everything they talk about and all the metaphysical, spiritual stuff, I had to learn how to breathe. I had to learn how to journal. I had to learn how to like do self care to like a new level of
Yes.
self care.
Yes.
Regular massages. I mean, I really just had to start doing major self care because I was burning out, and I was scared. My friends were so scared for me. They were so frightened because they saw how burnt I was.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so you just have to be willing to change, and it's hard. It's super hard.
It is. It is. It's challenging in the extreme.
Hmm.
One of the major focuses that we have in our care group is self-care. We care about your loved one, but we're really focused on you. How can we support you in having your best life within a situation that is challenging and, as you say, hard? Um, so I want to thank all three of our caregivers for your sharing. Each has a different perspective, but a commonality, which is you deal with what you have and you pull it together from deep inside. And you're all heroes, every single one. And you got drafted, you didn't join. So I think that's important to remember. So thank you. That's the end of our portion, Susan.
Here we go. I'm very, very moved by the sharing that I heard, and I feel so touched by the work and support you all get in the group work. And Karen, thank you so much for what is clearly so important for folks. And you all are really incredibly heroic and strong. I'm very inspired and love you all. So, Reverend Barbara, who you can see now, also runs a caregiver support group and has her own story as a caregiver and so on. And we're very honored to hear your what you've presented for us, your slides and so on. And welcome, Reverend Barbara. Thank you for sharing now.
Thank you. I'd like to begin with giving all of the caregivers a big hand of applause because I really commend you. You have so much courage, and I found that you all adapted to your present situations without looking too far back. And that's another reason to commend you.
Yeah.
And I want to say that I've been a caregiver myself. My husband's deceased, and I recently lost a son. So I don't walk in your shoes, but I really have compassion based on my life experiences. So I'd like to share some tips for surviving the holidays. I'm calling it navigating through the holidays. And the first thing that comes to mind is it's important to plan ahead. Then I'll be talking about put yourself first in terms of self-care. And the finances, keep your finances in check. You know, we often hear about buy this, this consumerism, all these advertisements, even before Halloween, there's advertisements out for Christmas. I mean, and it's like, whoa. And we can be very influenced by that. And find a way to honor the loved ones that you've lost. For example, my son that I lost a couple of years ago was very interested in marine biology. And so now I want to start a program for kids that are interested in marine biology, for example. And the fifth thing I'd like to talk about very briefly is whatever you indulge in, do it in moderation. And the last thing is don't be afraid to say no. You may be invited to a place where you used to go all the time with your loved one or person that you're caring for, but now you don't want to do that anymore. And so it's important to just say no. Say yes from your heart and no from your heart. And those are the some of the things that I'd like to talk about. In terms of planning ahead, find time for all of the activities that you used to do can be very tricky. So on top of your commitments, you may feel, some extra pressure, and that's normal. So I suggest that you create an action plan to help relieve your stress. Actually, write down all the things that you need to do so that you can then prioritize the things that are most important. And you may not get to everything that's on the list in one day. Just roll it over for the next day. And because you may forget what's most important. You may be just really stressed out and forget what's most important to you. I mentioned that it's very important to put yourself first. In our support group, in a church, we always talk about putting ourselves first, because if we don't, we can't take care of anyone else. If you don't take care of you, how can you take care of anyone else? And set aside to do the things that you enjoy. For example, I love reading a book in the evening as opposed to watching the news. The news could depress you. So do the things that you enjoy. I was telling a coworker that I really enjoy going to the movies. And so do what you enjoy. There is joy in the midst of the challenges that we have. It's important to find time to exercise. It really helps your brain. And it's important to get a good night's sleep. We talk about that, how important it is for rest and sleep. And I mentioned that it's important to keep your finances in check. I think it's more important to get something from your heart. It doesn't have to be a price tag on it, but let your spirit, your own spirit, speak to you with your financial plan and your budget. Make a budget and stick to it. And I think it's very important to. My brother always says, treat yourself, be good to yourself. Okay. And I mentioned earlier, honor the loved ones that you have lost. Or like one of our presenters said, she lost 2 jobs. And so there's grief behind that. It's changing from one location to another. There's a grief behind that. I had to put my mother in an assisted living. And I think I was sadder about it than she was, with the grief. So it may be difficult to celebrate the holiday season if you've lost someone. And sometimes distant makes it clearer. I too have three brothers, but they're 3,000 miles away. And I kind of grieve that too, that I can't be with them for this upcoming Thanksgiving and Christmas. So there are many facets of the whole notion of losing something or losing someone. And reflect on the special memories that you have. You know, I have a journal and I've got a ton of photograph books. And if I don't feel great, I'll go back and look at some of those beautiful photographs from the past. And the other thing that's important is I know the time is of essence, but if you volunteer your time to a local organization, you could put a smile on someone's face just by being there. Often you don't have to have a dialogue, just your presence is very, very meaningful. That food looks good, but I suggest that we indulge in moderation, indulge in the foods that you may have only once a year, that pecan pie or that apple pie or sweet potato pie. You don't have to give it up totally, but just be mindful of what you're eating. And don't let the pounds add up because they can do it very quickly. And saying no, it can be difficult, but don't be afraid to say no. It's okay to say no. It's a part of taking care of yourself. The more you say it, the easier it will get. Say yes to the events and the things that you know that will bring you joy, and say no to the things that will cause your heart to ache and to cause you to be in a state of just disappointment. So say no. Easier said than done.
Mm.
And finally, I just want to say blessings to you all, and keep on keeping on. And somehow we'll survive. Flexibility is very important, adjusting to various situations, and everything changes. So nothing stays the same. And thank you all for your attentiveness.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'll step back into my role as moderator here for a minute. We have a few minutes left, and I would really like to invite some of you folks that have been observing. I feel your presence. I know that you're all experiencing many of the same things, and I invite you to share now or ask questions. But we've really heard such a heartfelt experiences and challenges and heroic sort of going to make it and do what I can kind of energy. It's really quite amazing, but I am struck with how much I feel like reaching out to those of you who here haven't perhaps had a chance to share in this context. Maybe you are in a support group, I hope so. But we do have about 10 or so minutes, and it would just be lovely for folks to ask questions or share whatever you like. Let me hand it to Karen and Reverend Barbara to moderate or, take over this part of the sharing. Thank you.
Well, I reflect what you're saying, Susan. I would love to hear from some of you that have joined us today that I'm not familiar with. What is your journey like, and what sustains you, or just share with us what it's like for you. We'd love to hear it. So please give us some feedback of your situations. You've heard ours. We'd love to hear yours.
Karen, this is Laura Fultz. I joined a little late. I am a caregiver to my parents. I have 3 sisters, and we share the weekends trying to save them money and keep them in their home. They're 87. My mom has dementia. My dad's frail and kind of depressed about aging, like many of us. But when I go, and especially on the holidays, it does show all that we've lost in our mom. She's not able to participate hardly at all now. Little by little, I'm with them once a month, so I see the decline both in my mom and my father, and the tools to try to work with. My father's the hardest because he can still do a lot, but then he gets a little, I don't know. He's not the kindest type person. He hasn't been all our life. And I have worked and managed daycare homes for older adults, and it was so much easier working with all those other people. But working with our own family members is the hardest part, because it brings up decades of
absolutely.
interactions. And so
Absolutely.
it's a really good reminder. Well, I have my other 3 sisters, we support each other, and then I share a lot of the tools that Daybreak shares, and I just value all of your knowledge and your newsletters. There's so many good tools in that I can share with, I can read and learn myself, and then share with my sisters and my family and my parents' caregivers. So I really value this, and I know I haven't attended many of these. I do work full time. I just got off of a matter of balance class.
And Laura, just a reminder, if you miss a webinar, go to our website, and we
Okay.
have every topic of every webinar that we have covered. So there may be an issue you'd like to zone in on, and there's a webinar for that. So
Okay.
if you miss it or only see part of it, please access our website, and it'll bring you, you'll be able to do it at your own timing and leisure.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
And just to Barbara, thank you for the reminder of self-care. And one of our other caregivers shared about getting a massage. It's been months, and I actually have monthly massages that I pay for, like one a month. And
Yeah.
I haven't been in a couple, so it was a good reminder.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Good.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you.
Okay. Let's hear from anybody who would like to share or ask a question, or whatever contribution you want to make. We'd love to hear from you.
Or we can all sit here and breathe together. That's excellent.
Deep breath in and deep breath out. Yeah.
Gonna say, I imagine everybody here is a part of a support group, and it's probably the best thing that could have happened for me. I don't even remember exactly how I got hooked in to Daybreak, but it's just been wonderful. It's just a wonderful group of people sharing and caring, and everybody's situation is not exactly the same, but it's similar enough where there's empathy that exists between all of us, I think, for
Mhm.
each situation. And just so grateful. So if you know people who are not a part of a support group,
Yeah,
it certainly is something to encourage, you know.
Mhm.
it is. And, I think uh, what my observation has been over the years is that when you're a caregiver, you can have all the sympathy and empathy in the world from your family and your friends and anybody. But it takes someone who is walking in your shoes in their own circumstance, that you feel you are unconditionally accepted and encouraged to be yourself and not to put on a happy face on the days that aren't a happy face. But you are embraced by a group of people that get it and get you. And I always kind of uh, associate it with if anyone's ever been in a 12-step program. You could sit next to a biker guy filled with tattoos and chains, and he's telling your story. So I think the more important thing is how we connect at a heart level and at a
Mhm.
deep and authentic level. There aren't a whole lot of opportunities in our society to be able to have that available. And I think with the hardest job there ever will be and ever has been, called caregiving, it is so important to be able to have somebody say, hey, I get you. And it isn't just that level. That's great. You also get practical advice. You get feedback. Have you tried this? Have you tried that?
Mhm.
Have you tried IHSS?
Mhm.
Did you get a social worker? Um, so there's practical support in there too.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Um, let's see, Eve is going to speak. Oh, Eve, did you want to share with us? Cleo tuned in to you, it seems. She chatted to us that perhaps you did. Yeah, her audio is not working. Ah, maybe the daughter. I'm telling you, these young people, they definitely know more than I do.
That's for sure.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Reverend Barbara, perhaps you would mind talking a little bit about what your group is like. I know your group is in person.
Yeah.
Um, it's in a
Yeah,
church
well,
here
our theme is self-care, to the max. And just a couple days ago, we were talking about how important it is to establish healthy boundaries, which ties into saying yes and saying no when you really mean it. And one thing I wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about is you do need your space. You do need, the time for you, which is just really critical. And I've noticed there is a strengthening of compassion and camaraderie in our support group. There's a lot of compassion. Um, some of the anger about people's situations has dissipated, because they find commonality, amongst themselves. So there's, and as a facilitator of a support group, I have learned to take better care of me. And it's really important.
Thank you. Yes,
Oh,
Leo, please share
Cleo.
and take yourself off of mute. There, perfect.
I was going to say too, I was a caregiver for my mother, and my mother had passed when I did see the sign at a senior center for daybreak. And even though she had passed, I had a lot of residual stuff that, did I do the right thing? How was I? That kind of stuff. And I'm just so thankful and grateful for Daybreak, who helped me and is helping me navigate my way to go through. And I think also because I had someone to talk to who I trusted, it helped me to actually have a breakdown, sort of crying one day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just stuff that had happened. And then I did call Kaiser, and I got help for myself. But,
Cool.
sometimes all that pressure, you don't really even know you have it because you're so busy trying to take care. And so
Yes.
what you say is take care of you. Yeah,
Yes.
remember to take care of you.
Very good.
I want to speak to a minute about why it's important to be in a support group. I have very well-meaning friends. They mean well. They really do. But they did not understand the work it took and the stress I was under being a caregiver. And I would go to them and I would try to talk to them and explain to them and I would hear things like platitudes like, well, at least you get to be with your mom. I was just exhausted. And yeah, so I would hear these things from them and get very frustrated and not understand why they didn't get it. And so I'm glad I came to a support group that got it, that got the frustration and got it. In fact, this support group actually called me on my burnout one time. They said, Kim, you can't keep doing this. You are so burnt. They were able to see that. So it's important that you're in a group of like-minded people to kind of help you and understand. I mean, my friends love my friends. They never got it. They never got it.
No.
So no, thanks.
And they want to,
yeah.
they want to, but
Uh-huh.
they can't. It isn't won't, it's can't. In that instance, it's really I can't understand, but I think I do, but it takes someone in your situation to go, not only do I get what you're going through, I resonate with it because I identify with that also.
I want to tell everyone that, and thank you, Eve, for sharing in the chat. I know that you were unable to speak with your phone today with your microphone. And thank you for sharing. And I really want you all to know if you're not in a support group or you are and you need more support, turn to us, turn to Daybreak. We do straight on counseling over the phone. We invite you to our support groups, and we've talked about our webinars and weekly newsletters. We are now to the end of our sharing today, and so grateful for the 3 caregivers and the 2 facilitators and all the people who help to make these webinars happen, like Lowada, our little administrative genius.
She is.
There she is.
There she is.
Hello.
Thank you again. And you can listen to this again. You can share it in our next newsletter or just there it is. She's our genius. She's just right on the ball. Okay, dear, and all of you.
And thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Susan and Karen
Okay.
Thank you.
and Barbara.
All right. Stay
And-
well.
Happy holidays.
Yes.
And that too.
Thank you.